Rhode Island School of Design and studied under Aaron Sisson. And as a kid, I've always loved classic cars. My first car was a 36 Pontiac 4-door. My second car was a 29 Essex. My third car was a 67 Austin Healey 3000 convertible. I always liked the classics, but I would always have to go to the vintage boneyards to find parts to keep these things running. And when I was in the boneyards, I would see some amazing things on car fenders, on old broken windows, and the patterns and the colors and textures really enthralled me. And I thought, boy, some of this is as good as some of the best abstract artists I've ever seen. And so when I got a camera, I started swapping my toolbox for a camera and started haunting all the vintage junkyards and boatyards and everything, looking for textures and designs and different compositions that I thought were interesting and looked more like found art. So I go hunting for this wild art and then print them, frame them, and of course show them. I've got a piece down at the Fort Public Library right now in the Washaway exhibit, but that's a drone shot. Anyway, I also have a couple series where I combine some of the abstract pictures and make kind of a collage out of them. And I also kind of carry this forward to my drone shooting, where I'm looking for more patterns and textures than recognizable objects. And the point is not really to recognize what the subject matter is, but to take from it an experience that's personal, something that maybe is an emotion or something that's a reminiscence. Because we're all trained to try and recognize something, but when it's abstract, it becomes a bit of a challenge, and then it becomes personal. So I don't title my photographs what they are, but just where I take them or something of that sort, and let you experience something personal when you view them. And that's it.
Actually created this piece. I took the image, or a photo of the image, during the pandemic. I had just moved to Cumberland literally 3 weeks before the pandemic and didn't meet anybody, of course, and neighbors weren't talking to each other. So it was isolating at home, but then the weather got nice and I said, well, you know, I might as well use this time to go explore Cumberland, and came across the town forest behind the town hall. My daughter and I went on a little walk, and I came across this field, and it just, even though it was a lonely, quiet walk, it made me feel less alone to be out in nature and to see something so pretty, and you know, the town just is beautiful. So when I took the photo to me was far less interesting. But I focused on like doing this birch tree in the back, just very subtle details, and the little tiny purple flowers that were really subtle that you couldn't really see in the photo unless you really looked. So I tried to bring them out a little more to give them more presence in the painting. This one particular piece I chose for this event just because it is of Cumberland. And I have a couple other paintings of Cumberland, but I grew up in Harpswell. So the majority of the paintings that I've been creating in the past several years have been coastal, because I grew up on the water. So I have, you know, paintings of islands and Land's End and that kind of thing, lobster shacks, and but Cumberland has its own beauty that I'm now starting to be drawn to, and creating more landscapes of Cumberland. So if I have the opportunity and I'm at a scene or a place that I would like to paint, I use my camera and, you know, paint from photos. And I know that you don't get the best painting from photos, but if that's what I have right now. I actually finished a painting last week. It's of a fisherman statue at Land's End, Bailey Island. His name is Elroy Johnson, and I just finished. It's a bronze statue. I did that painting because I make a lot of my paintings into note cards, and I sell those at Land's End Gift Shop. And I'm also working on one of the Cribstone Bridge, which is my next painting. And then I have others kind of in my mind. There is a large one. I tend to paint not much larger than this because I get so detailed and then it takes so long and I don't have a lot of time. But I am working on a much larger one, and it's torturing me right now, but because I have to paint all the shingles on the roof, and I'm kind of procrastinating to finish that. But ever since I was a very, very young child, it was always, Christmas always came with lots and lots of markers of every color and pads of paper and pen, paints. I was always creative in school. And I originally, when I went to college, I had a different major, and my older brother is also an artist. But he ended up going to Pratt Institute, but he focuses more on graphic design. But everyone always talked about his art and how great he was, so I didn't feel like I lived up to his ability, so I didn't really pursue it until I went to college and wasn't anywhere near him, and realized that, hey, I like, this is for me. This is what I really want to do. So that's when I switched my major and got a fine arts degree instead. And when I did start painting again in the pandemic, it hit me how much I needed it and how much it's a part of me, and I really need it for my mental health. And it's hard because if you haven't been, I don't want to say using your hand, it's hard to get that flow back, and just the way your brain has to think, it's hard to get that back. And for a while I avoided it because I couldn't be good right away, but I thought, what do I have to lose? And so then the more I do it, the more it just flows. So yeah, it feels good, and I'm glad. It's definitely a part of me that I have to keep nurturing. And I hadn't really had a chance to focus on what I really love. And when I retire, this is what I want to do. So I hope to keep doing that. And I have a couple shows here and there, and just kind of slowly getting out there. And it's just fun for me to meet other artists and to keep creating. So yeah.
I'd rather talk about the painting than myself. It's attached to Safe Passages, if any of you are familiar with the history of that. It was started by a young lady from Cumberland. She went to Guatemala to learn more about Spanish as she was teaching, and she did some wonderful things down there. She went to the dump, was horrified, and started up a whole new fund called Safe Passage, which is still very much going on, still very viable. Unfortunately, very tragically, she was killed in an automobile accident in Guatemala when she was only 36. But this painting was attached to her obituary, and I took one look at it and I thought, oh my God, that whole story is so sad, and she is so beautiful, and it's the only portrait I've ever done. But I'm starting back into it.
These are quilted landscapes. One is done with pieces of fabric and glue. The other is cut, sewn, and then quilted. Well, I can tell you how I do it. My husband took a class for the smaller landscape here, and he did that landscape in the class. Now, when I create a landscape, I vision it in my mind, what it should look like. And I'll get out all the fabrics that I think should go in the landscape. I'll get partway through the landscape, and this piece of fabric over here says, I belong in there. And later on, this piece over here says, put me in, put me. So all of a sudden, my vision has turned into something completely different. And you're seeing the end result. Well, there is texture. If you feel it, you can feel the trees and you can feel the flowers. So there's the texture from the sewing of the fabric, and there's texture from the quilting of the piece. My husband and I went to a quilt show in Lowell, Massachusetts, and one of the vendors was taking 2 pieces of fabric, cutting it with a rotary cutter, sewing it together, adding another piece, and it created a beautiful landscape. So I went home and I created my first landscape. It was only about 5 by 6. It was small, but I was proud of it. And I continued making landscapes from then on. My husband's piece is the smaller landscape. He did that in a class at a quilt show. It's made from small pieces of fabric that are glued as opposed to being cut and sewn. But it still gives a similar depth to the landscape. In our living room, on the wall above the fireplace, I had my piece. His piece was on the mantle. And when Devin wanted pieces for the art show, she took those too. Well, the larger one is essentially behind the television, but on the wall. So when you look for a place to go in your imagination on vacation, you can go in that landscape and feel calm and collected. I'll go out in nature, I will take pictures, but like I said before, I can envision what I want to do, and it won't turn out like that at all. It has its own voice, its own method of getting there. We have to go shopping, and we have to buy fabric that would be good in a landscape. I don't buy fabric for a particular landscape when I'm shopping. And what's interesting is that my husband will go ahead of me and pick out all the bolts that he thinks I should buy, and I'll put half of them back because they're too large a scale or not the right color or doesn't appeal to me, and I'll buy just the ones that I feel can go into a landscape. So then we come home and I think about a landscape I'd like to do, be it from a picture or from what I've seen, or maybe just imagining a place. Then I'll pick out all the fabrics that I think should go into that landscape. And it never works. I get all these fabrics and I start working with them, and there'll be one piece left over somewhere that says, I belong in there. And it happens over and over again in creating the landscape. And when I'm finished, it doesn't look a thing like what I imagined. It looks beautiful. And it has depth, and it's a place where you really want to go. So once the piecing is done, then I put it on batting, and I quilt through the pieced top and the batting. Then I have to audition mats for the picture. Now, which color mat will look the best? Now, should it be a big piece or should it be a small piece? What looks better? And it's amazing what a mat does to a landscape. You've got to have the right color, and you've got to have the right size. So sometimes with a big landscape I have a piece left over that's all quilted, and that makes a beautiful bookmark. So after I put the quilted piece with the mat, I have to find a frame. And the frame can change the whole aspect of the landscape. We conferred on a lot of things to determine. He wanted to make a Lone Star quilt. And I told him that would be too difficult for him to do as a first quilt. So I designed a quilt for him. And I wrote a pattern for it, and I've taught workshops on it since then, but this is a quilt that he made.
I spent about 25, 30 years as a fire chaplain with the Cumberland Fire Department in local towns, and in doing that, spent a lot of time being a compassionate companion to victims and families. And what I learned is that you quickly get a family member out of the street and out from underneath the power lines during an ice storm into a safe spot. And what I have attempted to do with these is to create a safe, quiet place that person can retreat through when situations in their life or in society become very stressful. So the idea is that these can go on a bookshelf or a table or whatever. I do them in all sizes, and my church is now taking smaller pieces, and we are giving them on behalf of the church to individuals that are moving out of their own homes into assisted or some other kind of care, downsizing, and they can have something, a point of just reflection and peace and memory of earlier days. And they are all hand cut. Everything is hand cut freehand with a small, tiny oxyacetylene flame. And in doing that, temperature control, just before you get to go through the copper, the brass, or the steel, it will start to puddle and melt. And so I have been able to get textures in that. And I do these in all sizes. The major process or project that I've been working on for the last year has been a bald eagle nest and family. And this is being done to honor my son and his family in Kentucky. His son received his Eagle Scout 2 years ago or 3 years ago, and my granddaughter has completed all of her requirements and board of review and just waiting for the official ceremony to receive her Eagle Scout. My son received his Eagle Scout from a troop here in Cumberland and went away to college and started a family. And as his kids grew up, he became the Scout Master at a Boy Scout troop in Kentucky. And his wife, Brenda, became the den mother for Cub Scouts, so forth. As the kids grew, they got into what used to be Boy Scouts is now, I believe, called Scouts of America. And Scouts of America is now co-ed, so there are girls in the formerly Boy Scout troop. When that happened, my daughter-in-law stepped up and became the founding female Scout Master for their troop. and actually went with my granddaughter Abby. Brenda and Abby went to Philmont and did a 100-mile hike not this summer, but the summer before, and came back and was diagnosed with glioblastoma, which is a terminal brain cancer, and suffered or lived through that for about 14 months and died in January of this year. What I'm doing is a sculpture, half-scale eagle, which is this. This is the proof of concept. I'm starting over, after a year, I'm starting over on the actual sculpture. It will be a nest that will be about 6 feet across with one adult eagle flying in with food in its talon, and will be landing at the nest where the other adult and 2 chicks are perched. And so it will be, hopefully it'll be placed in the Eagle Lodge of a scout camp in Kentucky where they are so active. And my hope is that sitting in this place where they do a lot of training and merit badges and adult training and so forth, it will be an aspirational piece for the young scouts, boys and girls, to look up to on their trail to Eagle. And it will be a testament not only to my son and daughter-in-law, but to all the other adult leaders that spend hours and years making eagles. This is just a crowning piece that I've been working on for over a year. There is no blueprint of how to construct an eagle. So I have called this my concept, proof of concept. And I've had to figure out the scale, the size, whatever. All the feathers are individually cut, and these are cut on a CNC computer-aided manufacturing machine. But if you look at the wings, there are many, many feathers. There are 10 flight feathers and then secondary, tertiary feathers. Each one of them is separate and independent. I have actually created artwork and tool paths for the CNC plasma cutter for each of the different, everyone is different. And what I've discovered is they started off looking very much like a feather because they were designed following the National Wildlife Society's Feather Atlas for the eagle. And they have all the different feathers for size. And they all have very, I don't know if you can see it here, but they all had very small quills at the end. And that is the way it should be, except it doesn't work for the sculpture because they are movable and they shouldn't be. So I have taken artistic liberty in terms of redesigning the good Lord's feathers to make them something that I can weld together. So I've changed the pattern on hundreds of feathers. And the ones down here that will be covered by other feathers are only one-sided, but that's what it looks like. And then I take a pneumatic die grinder with a cutoff wheel, and I make the veins and the quills and whatever, each individual one. So that's how the detail is developed. And the head is an interesting item too, but it's learning. There's no blueprint to find or to follow. So I really wanted to have something that I could say, I made this. Like it or not, I made this. And so that was my dream. And when I started at Artiscope, I was very nervous because I said, these people know what they're doing. These people are artists like the ones represented here in Cumberland that are talented people. And my wish was that somehow I would be talented, not just hairy. So, and I can say over the years, as I have taken classes and spent time in the studio, I now am comfortable saying that I am a metal artist. And it's a great feeling, and it's something, I'm not a rocket scientist, and it's something, as other artists here have said, that is accessible and reachable by other members of the community. And I certainly would encourage them to find a makerspace or an art studio or something, take classes, sit in your living room and look out the window and just make art, because it is great. I was actually selected to be in a juried show in Yarmouth at St. Bartholomew's Episcopal Church, and have had pieces there on display, juried pieces there on display for a couple of years. I have done a lot of the craft pop-up shows at farmers markets and whatever, with trees more like this. But people love them, and I'm finding really comfortable saying that I have become an artist, which surprises me to no end. But it's been fun. It's a great community, and anyone that has interest in building or making, the maker spaces are great fun, because you get opportunities, you get fellowship, and you get encouragement.
Hi, so I'm Tom Gill, and I absolutely did not paint the painting, this one, but my mother did. She's 39 years old, and she was born in 1927, so, and she's right back there. Yay! She was too shy to speak, so she said, "Will you?" And I said, "Well, okay, but what do I have to say?" And so I'm not too clear, but anyway, she started painting back in the 60s when we lived in Madawaska, Maine. She took lessons in Edmonton in Canada, and worked with oil, as you can see here. And this is one of her favorites, and it's actually going to be my painting. So she said, "You're going to take this one." So that's another reason to speak about it. After she evolved as an artist and worked in a lot of different mediums, she did watercolors for a while, she did basket making for a while, she was into quilt making for a long time and made a lot of beautiful quilts that she can probably show some of those here too at some point. Other than that, my parents moved to Cumberland about 7 years ago and live with my sister down here, and I live over here in North Conway. Over regularly. And it's a great opportunity to show stuff and meet everyone.
This is actually one of my favorite pieces. I really enjoy doing Maine landscapes, seascapes, waterscapes. I love this one because it is, for me, it's sort of a sense of peacefulness, serenity. I love being outside, and I just felt like this was kind of one of those moments that we all sort of experience when we're outside, and this was a way to experience it over and over. When I first did this, it was the oars that I was playing with, and I was putting them in different spots and trying to sort of play with it, like, will people notice if maybe the perspective is a little off on this, that it makes it a little bit more unique? But I have trouble, like, I'm a detail-oriented person. I have a background of nursing, and then I was a professor, so it's like black and white. The gray is a little hard for me, but I try to do that. So it was playing with the oars and then some of the knots in the ropes, because that's secondary to the boats. But I was doing some sort of fun things with the knots to just add to it, whether people noticed it or not. I know it's there, and it's fun. The piece that I might show in the fall is buoys on the side of a fishing shed, and there's something about those ropes too that's different, and it's kind of fun just to see if people do notice it or not. I have several others, and actually I brought in one of my sons to help me decide, because he is also very artistic. I got to experience art a little bit with my kids because, you know, you do art with your kids, and they both were very interested, so that was really rewarding and fun too, and it reminded me how much I missed it.
and how much I wanted to be back into it. My mom used to take me to book fairs, and she was always a little disappointed because I would go for the dot to dot. I forgot what they're called, but I think it was dot to dot drawing. And because I was always amazed how line after line, dot to dot, you came up with something you could recognize. And it actually was a good foundation because that's what art is. It's lines and mark making. So I was really interested in it from that age on. I used to make, design, and create cards for birthdays and Father's Day, Mother's Day, all of that kind of thing. Didn't really take art in school at that time, but in college I took a drawing course, did some drawing. When we first moved to Maine, I took an oil painting course, but then life took off and I didn't get back to it until I was getting close to retirement. We all have creativity in us, but lots of times the voices in our head tell us we aren't good at it, so we don't attempt it. And as I said before, if people just pick up a pencil and just start drawing lines and marks, they'd be amazed at what they can do. Some of the art classes I've done, they would have us do, if you're right-handed, they would have us draw with our left hand to show us you can still make art. We've been blindfolded before. We've had to do continuous art without bringing the pencil up. So there's a lot of ways to learn and discover or uncover, release the artist in you. You know, you don't have to call yourself an artist if you're uncomfortable, but we all have a creative spirit, no question. You know, anything that you have passion about takes some work, but it also takes getting out of what's normal for you. And you know, there's this, the great thing about this little exhibit that Devin curated is that it's various kinds of art. So, you know, it might not be painting for someone. It might be fabric art, it might be metal art, but we all have a creative spirit, and it's kind of important to tap it because it's part of who you are. And if it goes unexplored, you know, you lose that ability to find another sense of who you are. Sometimes it feels like there's so many beautiful things to paint, so many beautiful scenes, landscapes, seascapes, all of that, that it is hard to sort of narrow it down. But typically, if you are out, something will strike you that someone else might not even see, but you see it because you have that eye. I spend a lot of time looking at the sky and clouds, you know, and then I bring it down and start seeing other things. And it is very hard, but there's a sense inside you eventually that you get inspired by. And that's like you can't wait to get to the canvas. I've recently been commissioned to do a forest scene, and it's probably the biggest one I've done so far, canvas, and it's just built in my head, and I can't wait to get to it, to do it. And I love doing forest, and that's what they want. They want a forest scene. Greens are hard, but again, when you're inspired by the idea and the scene, you work out the challenges, such as getting the right greens. If you look out, people will say, oh, it's, you know, green grass or green tree, but if you really look at that grass, it's not one green, it's not two greens, it's many greens. It could also be a little blue, could be a little purple, could be a little red. When you really look at the grass or really look at the trees, the clouds, they're not white, they're white, gray, blue, purple, pink, and that's what you start noticing as an artist, and you want to capture that. So that's why sometimes it does take a little longer to do that, but that's what makes it interesting and fun and makes the piece unique in the end, because you've tried to capture all those nuances that people say, oh, it's green. It's green, but it's many greens and it's also many other colors. So sometimes it's a slow burn as to what you narrow down to do and focus on, or you could have multiple things going. You know, if you work on one and you get frustrated, you can have passion for art, but it can be very frustrating. And you work through that. And it's often good to put a piece aside, whether it's drawing or painting, start another piece. When I get a little tired of painting or I get lost and I don't know what to do, I draw. I love to draw. And that kind of gets me back. I'm still doing art, and it gets me back to painting. But I also like to do, as I think I mentioned, portraits. Whether it's people I know. I've done one of my granddaughter for every year of her life so far, which is really fun. And what I like to do with sketches is I'll sketch it in graphite, but then there'll be some color in it that I'll add, not the whole thing. I'll usually do the eyes. And one time she was wearing just a little light pink velvet thing, little top, and I did a very light version of that. So it doesn't take away from the face of the person, but it just adds a little something. You know, in the past, there were no pictures, there were no cameras. That's how people captured the moment. And even though we have cameras and all of that, there's something different about a painting or a drawing. It captures something differently. So to me, it still has value, and the time that you put into it has value. So I wanted to do that for her, that someday she'll have this whole collection of herself over the ages, and then it's fun to draw something that's that meaningful. This is someone I know, and it's got to look like her, right? It can't just look like any little girl, it's got to look like her, and that's the challenge. You've got to make it who that person is, which is really fun to do too. There is a creative spirit in all of us, and even though these kinds of things can look daunting, we all started somewhere, and they didn't look as good as all these pieces do. So just if you have the urge just to pick up the pencil and put it to paper and just play. Just don't limit yourself, play. And if you'd rather pick up a paintbrush, pick up a paintbrush and just play. Don't criticize, don't judge, just go with it. And don't look at it, it's like painting a wall and someone comes in and you're halfway painting, oh, you missed a spot here, you missed a spot there, but I'm not done yet. Give yourself that luxury of taking the time, stepping back, and seeing the whole thing, but not stopping yourself when you feel like you see something that's not right. You can always fix it. You can fix anything that's graphite or oil or any art thing you can fix if you feel like you need to. I mean, I look at this and I see there's a lot of things I could have done differently, but that's an artist's eye, you know, it just happens. But everybody has that, and I would encourage anybody who has any little remote of a little spark to give it some air. Just pick up a pencil and do it.
Well, I'm a beginner watercolor painter and started just a couple years ago during COVID, naturally. They're a little bit of a beginner style, but I like them. I love color. I've been a hairdresser for a lot of years and have done a lot of work with coloring hair. But once I retired, I decided that it was time to move on to something else. I like to do, all my stuff is freehand. I don't copy anything, I don't trace anything. It's just, I sit down with a piece of paper and go to it. Started, you know, just slow, self-taught, a few classes online. That was about it. And I have a nice little painting spot. I have a very nice laundry room corner that my husband built for me, and it's pleasant and lots of shelving, lots of space. So it's nice. He always encouraged me. And I've got a few more at home. I've never really had them on display before. This is the first time, but fun. I hope to do a little bit more. I don't know whether I'll ever be a professional artist. There's so much talent out there, and the more you paint and the more you see, it's just incredible. I love to see the creativity that people come up with. Devin has done a wonderful job for the town of Cumberland. She's organized more things, and everything comes just out perfectly, and you know, she's a real asset for our community. And I thank her greatly for, you know, mentioning it to, you know, us little town people that say, gee, can you share something, you know, which is nice. It's a great community to be part of.